a beautiful part about breathwork, what you mentioned there, is like you do have that off button to a sense. So when people first get into the work of like, I want to heal, I always recommend to people that they do start with the breath, because you hold it within yourself. And I know that for myself, some of my breathwork journeys have been even more powerful than plant medicine have been. Welcome into the Conscious Coach podcast. I'll be your guide in uncovering the path to finding your true self within. We'll dive into the power of conscious living, the significance of mindfulness, breathwork, and breaking free from hustle culture in our own personal growth. Through these intimate discussions, I'll share not only my own life experiences, but also those of remarkable individuals who have created impact in the world through becoming conscious so that you can do the same. What is up, everybody, you beautiful souls, and welcome in to the Conscious Coach podcast. Today, I'm going to be sharing space with a friend and somebody that holds beautiful space herself. I am here with Claire Ollila. She is a world-class trauma-informed breathwork mentor. She's certified by Awaken Breathwork with Lucas Mack and Hella Weston, and she is somebody that holds space here in Austin, Texas. She has incredible breathwork sessions that I have been to and experienced myself, and she helps mainly women, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Mainly women really step into their power and release what's holding them back so that they can show up how they want to in the world. So thank you, Claire, for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me on. We've known each other for a bit here in the Austin Vortex, and it's always fun to connect in these ways. So I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to start off by getting to know you a bit more. I always like to hear people's stories of becoming a breathwork facilitator. Is probably not something that we do or say when we're growing up. Like, hey, I want to be a breathwork facilitator when I grow up. That's not really something that is given to us in school. So I would just love to hear a little bit more about your story, like your upbringing and what really brought you into the place that you're at now, where you are holding space for these women.
Yeah, and man, I love when I'm listening to a podcast and it kicks off like this, because you never really know what people have been through, and to hear some of the stories. So I'm totally open to sharing what brought me to breathwork. I grew up with my aunt, who was a medium. And from a very young age, I can remember being at her house and having sleepovers, and we would have these spa nights. And there was one particular night that's so vivid in my memory, where I was probably around maybe 8 years old, and she was tucking me into bed on the first floor of the house, and she was sleeping on the second floor of the house. And she was tucking me into bed saying, "Claire, now you know I've got ghosties in my house." That's what she used to call the spirits that lived in her house. She was like, "You know, I've got ghosties." And she would always talk to me just in such a neutral tone about these other realms and these subtle senses, which I think really helped to normalize them for me and help me be not so afraid of them. And so she would tuck me in. She's like, "You know, I've got ghosties in the house. And so if anything weird happens tonight while you're sleeping, just know that all you have to do is see yourself wrapped up in white light and tell them that you don't want them here. And just say, you're not welcome here, and go away." And they'll go away. And this very vivid memory that I have is of her going upstairs, and I'm kind of in that half asleep, half awake phase. And I kid you not, the entire comforter just like gets pulled off me as I'm sleeping in bed. Like it was up to my shoulders, and it gets pulled down to my knees. And I immediately grab it and I pull it up to my face, and I'm like a little scared at this point, like not gonna lie. But I remember doing exactly what she told me, envisioned myself in white light, told them, go away, I don't want you here. And they did. And I slept soundly the rest of the night. And then I feel like from that point on, it obviously wasn't a linear path to getting to breathwork, but that one experience set the tone for the rest of my life, for the way that I relate to these healing modalities, and also to the way that I set up my own energetic hygiene, which is something that's really important to me in this work, which we can totally jam on. But yeah, that was like a really defining moment. And then, of course, just having her as sort of a mentor growing up, and something that's really inspiring to show me what's possible in the world.
Yeah, that is such a profound and beautiful experience that you got to share, and really introducing you to these different realms that are available to us that we can tap into. And so experiencing that as an aunt, like, or with your aunt, and growing up with a medium, that's pretty special. What brought you into deciding for yourself that you wanted to become certified in breathwork? Like, what was the driving force behind that?
Yeah, so I started out as a mindset coach in this world. I was in the world of mindset coaching starting from about 2020, and everything was virtual, and it was amazing. And my program I was so excited about, my clients I was in love with, they were getting awesome results. But what I started to notice was, first of all, this frustration point within myself of how much effort it took to create lasting change through mindset alone. And I would go into these meditations, and I would do all these visualizations, and I would ask myself these very neuro-linguistic programming like questions to like change my beliefs and affirmations and all the things. And then it's like the sparkle would kind of fade, and then I'd have to like put all that work back in again. And I felt that frustration. I was like, you know what, if I'm struggling with this, like there's got to be a better way. And with breathwork in particular, I had tried breathwork a couple of times. I really didn't resonate with it at first until I had a journey with two facilitators in Toronto. And there was something about their frequency, like the way that they showed up, that I just really resonated with, and also the music and just all of it. I ended up having this really powerful experience of connecting with my future daughter. And she came through in this very special session, and it's like I could hear her voice in my head. And for anyone who's never experienced that before, it's almost like the way you hear a song that's like stuck in your head. It's like you just hear that thing that doesn't go away, and it feels very certain. And I hear, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." And all of us, I can see you. You're like, oh, that's how I'm feeling too. and I could ask her back. I remember having this moment of realizing, like, and so I go, "Is that you?" And she's like, "Yes, it's me." And so I start asking her all these questions. I'm like, "What's your name?" And I just hear this giggle in my like head voice. And she goes, "It doesn't matter what my name is, because you're going to call me a nickname anyways. Like, you're so silly for even asking." I'm like, "Okay, you're sassy." And then I know from previous connections with her that she likes to send me rainbows. And so in that moment I asked, "Hey, can you send me a rainbow?" And it was this gloomy ass Toronto gray February day. And I hear the voice come through. She goes, "I can try, but it's going to be hard." And then there is a pause. And then I hear, "You're going to have to go out into the kitchen." And so I kind of wrap up my breathwork journey. I ground in, have some nice restorative breaths. And then as soon as I open the door to go out into the kitchen, the first thing my eyes land on is this rainbow as journal sitting on the kitchen counter.
Oh, wow.
So that experience really set the stage for how powerful breathwork can be, especially, I mean, let alone all of the emotional benefits and trauma healing and all the things. But just that one experience of really learning how you can tap into intuitive senses, that was really powerful and definitely set me off on a journey.
Yeah, wow. That is such a beautiful experience. And I can resonate with you deeply on that, because my son will continuously come through and just be like, hey, what's up, Dad? Like, I see you. I see what you're doing. Like, keep doing it so you can teach me when I'm there. And it's so powerful, these realms that we can get into and what we can access with our breath. And so what led you to, from there, being like, okay, now I'm going to go do this and go through this whole training? Like, what led you to that?
Yeah, so when I moved to Austin, which was after that experience that I just shared, I moved from Toronto to Austin, and it was really funny. I felt like I was just in such a stuck point in my coaching. Like, it really wasn't lighting me up anymore because I was feeling that frustration in the work and just really seeking out something that was more of a somatic-based practice, that the body can kind of take care of things on its own without the mind needing to add so much power behind it. So we moved to Austin, and it was like this instant click within a couple weeks of being here. Just this clarity came through around how impactful psychedelics have been in my healing journey and getting to know myself and getting to know God in a way outside of the way I used to know God in the church. So many things. And what I knew to be true is that if that really was my path, to work with people with these entheogenic or psychedelic substances as they become less stigmatized and eventually legalized, that I needed to have a very, very strong foundation in trauma-informed work and in holding people in those deep spaces while they still have an off button. Because once you're in those substances, I mean, there's no off button, as many of us might know. And so breathwork is an amazing tool to be able to access very similar spaces and receive very similar healing results while still being in control of, if things get too activated, just dial the breath back. But it seems like the first stepping stone for me to really become masterful in the way that I hold space for people in very intimate, vulnerable settings. And I'm sure you can relate to that experience of someone really going through it, like releasing a lot, or maybe just feeling very stuck with the breath. And then there's like this breaking point, and it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of emotion. And as the facilitator, like, you've got to be able to hold down that fort and stay solid and regulated in yourself in order for them to feel safe enough to go there.
Developing a foundation where you can hold that space. And that's a beautiful part about breathwork. What you mentioned there is like you do have that off button to a sense. So when people first get into the work of like, I want to heal, I always recommend to people that they do start with the breath, because you hold it within yourself. And I know that for myself, some of my breathwork journeys have been even more powerful than plant medicine have been. And we can get access to that same realm that plant medicine brings us to, but we can work our way up to it. And that's a beautiful part about it, is we don't have to go and do ayahuasca, for instance, and be shot into this realm. Like, we can start with our breath, and it allows us to be able to get to know ourselves and be able to handle ourselves when those huge emotions or things come up where we feel out of control. What were some of the main things that you learned maybe about yourself, and also just learned about holding space for others with trauma as you were going throughout the training and even now with doing your sessions?
Yeah. Oh, such a big question. I'd say the biggest thing is safety. I've learned a lot about safety over the last, I guess, 2 years really since my training, and now being practiced in the field. And initially it was safety within myself. For example, anger historically in my life has been an emotion that is very difficult for me to access growing up. And I'm sure a ton of people can relate to this, but I was the most sensitive child. And because of that, at least from my perspective, it seemed like my parents their patience sort of waned on how much safety they could provide for me as I was experiencing intense emotion. And so eventually what that led to was a fear within me to be able to even express that, because I knew that it would get shut down, or at least I might express, and then the question back would be, oh, well, why are you crying? There's nothing to cry about. And as a child, that's so confusing, because I'm feeling something. So obviously there's something to cry about, but then it creates this lack of safety within yourself to then go there and feel the thing. So it just gets tangled up and locked up inside. And so what I noticed was that when it came to expressing anger, I would just come through tears. It was almost as if, or like any other emotion, no matter what I was feeling, it would come out as tears. And it was almost like I only had one button to push with my feelings. And so one of the biggest things that I learned first in breathwork with myself and holding space for myself before holding space for clients was learning how to create that safe dynamic in order to practice expressing certain emotions in a mature and appropriate way with spaciousness, and also staying regulated within my own system through that expression. And the thing is that the more capacity I've found to hold that space for myself, it's like the more capacity I also have for it to be okay for other people to express. I'm noticing that the more I can go there and feel safe, the less judgment I have around other people going there, and also the more groundedness I have in myself to stay regulated as those things are coming out. So it's this very interesting dynamic. But when it comes to trauma-informed facilitation, whether it's little t trauma or big T trauma, the thing is always safety. It's like, is your guidance permission-based? Are you providing guidance that allows the client or even yourself to kind of choose their own adventure in a way? And that creates a whole lot of trust that they know you've got them and that you're there for their best interest, even if it is a little bit off course from what you originally thought the session was gonna end up as.
Yes. Yeah. The expectations versus reality is a big thing with this work. Like, oh, I want this session to go this way. And then it completely goes a different way, but it's beautiful in its own sense. And a big thing to hit on there is that you know, like your sessions or anything that you see in the physical world is a mirror of what you have inside of yourself. So with you giving yourself permission to feel your feelings and feel your emotions, you've in turn given other people the ability, that permission too. And I think that's a big thing that we see in breathwork sessions is like if somebody is releasing emotions and they allow themselves to release it, it also gives everybody else permission. So that's something that we can, you know, focus on ourselves, is how much space are we allowing ourselves to have to feel our own emotions with trauma and anything that we go on or anything that happens to us through our life. In terms of emotions and allowing emotions to be released, I think that's something that sometimes turns people away from breath work and like these sessions when they see people just screaming or yelling and crying. It for some people, I know it causes us to be very uncomfortable. And so are you able to touch on that topic a little bit of like the importance of feeling emotions and knowing that it's safe to feel that. And maybe if I'm somebody or a listener, somebody that doesn't right now really give themselves to feel or permission to feel their feelings, like how can somebody start doing that? How can somebody start to feel okay with it?
Yeah. So my perspective is that we all in this field of work, we all have our own gifts that we bring, right? And we all have got kind of a different flavor, and whatever certain people are needing, whatever they're drawn to, they're going to be drawn to that facilitator for a reason, right? I feel my gift is in allowing people to have a very easeful and graceful process through that emotional release. Sometimes I work through my own little tangled web of projections and beliefs around maybe the dramatization and glorification of that really big, loud, cathartic, messy release. Because oftentimes that's what grabs attention on social media, and so those images and videos go viral, it grows the account, whatever. But it's also, I understand it's imagery, and it captures the eye and kind of captures the essence, and so there's a balance there. But what I find really beautiful when it comes to accessing emotion is titration, essentially. So going at a pace that is safe and accessible, and also just like that little bit of an edge. And so what that can look like, if you're somebody listening and you find it very difficult to access emotion, or maybe you're like I was and you kind of only have one button for emotion to come out as, and you're interested in becoming the kind of person who can express a spectrum of emotion in a mature and powerful and appropriate way contextually, that's something that breathwork allows you to access. For me, sometimes that looked like I would go into a full journey and I would have the intention of, okay, like, let's just lean into anger and just kind of practice pressing that button. And so I would just start off by pounding my fists, not a ton, but just like a little bit, kind of gently pounding them against the floor. And then as I would activate more and more with that breath and feel more comfortable with that motion, I would add intensity, and then I might draw it back if that felt good. And that just allows you to kind of edge into it without it being too much, too fast, too soon. Especially if you do have very heavy or intense trauma that you are working to resolve. Sometimes it can be too much, too fast, too soon. And as a trauma-informed facilitator, we want to make sure we're not re-traumatizing somebody by like pushing them to go into something they're not ready to transform.
Yes. Yeah, it is like giving yourself that little bit of permission, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and not too much, too fast, too soon is a big aspect of that. Is, the more you allow yourself to go into it, you like feel it, you can kind of push the throttle forward and then be like, oh, okay, let me back up a little bit, push the throttle forward a little bit more until you're like ready to full send it and just go and like have that release. I think that's a beautiful aspect of what breathwork allows for, and also having the right facilitator and like somebody that is called to you and can really hold that space to give you that permission. And having people around you that can give you a permission is a beautiful thing too, to know that you're not alone as you feel these emotions. And with feeling emotions and allowing yourself to get to a place where you can give that permission to yourself. I know you mentioned like breathwork is a practice that you can do, and you mentioned like banging your fists a little bit and getting there. Are there any practices that you've instilled for yourself that have really helped you give more and more permission to express your emotions?
Oh yeah, tapping is a big one. So just using like a medium pressure tapping really intuitively. There is something called emotional freedom technique, where there's kind of specific tapping points and a pattern to follow and things to say. I generally like to follow more of an intuitive approach wherever I just feel called to tap. I find that really helps me come back to my body, and then I can combine that with maybe some restorative breathing. And that's something, God, I tap fucking all day long.
You do a lot of tapping.
Yeah, I love it. I'll just be right before this call. It's just like, okay, there I am. That's kind of the feeling of it for me. Just really quick, 5-10 seconds, just tap. There I am. That feels good. And then I also have really been loving toning lately, and not necessarily needing to do it any particular way. I feel like everything I do is very intuitive, just kind of what feels right and feels good in my body at that particular time. But sometimes I'll just sit on the shower floor and let the water run over me, and I'll just tap, and then I'll just hum certain notes, whatever sounds good. And it's like the vibration of that just moving through my body. I notice, especially if I do it for an extended period of time, maybe like 2 to 5 minutes of just humming different notes that feel good, there's something that it does in my body. And I'm sure there's science that I could pull out of Google or whatever to back this up, but I don't really care, because I feel it. I feel the shift, and it's like it just attunes whatever needed to be attuned in my body. So toning is something that I've been loving for that, and also just to practice taking up space, because if there is ever one part of my body that's locked up, it's always my throat. It's always my throat. There's something about just like speaking authentically and sharing my truth that I used to have a lot of trouble with. A lot of fear around being judged or perceived in a certain way. I was always the good girl, straight A, never broke the rules kind of kid. And in this work, you've got to be like your full authentic self. And I also just know too much. I know too much about what's normal and acceptable in society is oftentimes harmful. And I don't know, I'm ready to just be a way paver and say what's real. So toning can help me practice taking up space in that way with my voice.
Yeah. We are vibration, we are frequency, and that tone. It's like doing an ohm, like these different noises, and using our voice can really attune things with our energy centers, like get them in more alignment. They're vibrating at a certain frequency as well. And the tapping is something that I said is something I always see you do. I know that for myself, it really helps me just feel into different places in my body, like just bring my attention to, okay, in my heart, this is what it's feeling. In my solar plexus, this is what it's feeling. It really does bring you back to yourself, and it's a way it helps you get out of the mind. I know we said we might touch on something a little bit controversial here. So I would love, you touched on like society and what is portrayed in society, what is okay in society. Like, what are your viewpoints on, or what are your feelings on, we're going and you're going and doing this work that really allows people to see something different than what society portrays as normal. And then we do live in this more than ever society where like there's these ways of living that we have been accustomed to, and people think that they have to go and live that. With that duality, what's your viewpoint on this? Like, how can somebody that is very much in that realm currently, what they need to be doing, how can they start to break free from that?
This is such a big question, and one that I'm very familiar with, because I find that oftentimes the kind of person that gravitates towards my style of facilitation, it's primarily very corporate women. Women who have done very well climbing the corporate ladder and are very in their masculine, or feel like they're so in their masculine in the one part of the day that then they're like really in their wounded or kind of off balanced feminine later on, or they're just really craving to be surrounded by a community of very safe, nurturing, loving, like embodied feminine women. Like that's kind of the kind of people that usually find their way to me. And I think it's because I'm not afraid of modern society. And I kind of want to unpack that more. Like, I'm not the kind of person where I want to live completely off grid with making all my own food and goats and chickens, and all the chickens would be dope. But I don't need to completely remove myself from the matrix. You know, I love my iPhone. I love Wi-Fi and staying connected to the world. And I love waking up in the morning and feeling excited to use my dopamine in a productive and powerful way. Like, that shit lights me up to be in the work. And I think that, you know, if you're feeling on the imbalanced end of that, where you are very much in the work and in the matrix, but you're seeking out more balance with wellness or just caring for your body, or maybe just feeling more in touch with yourself, that baby steps is definitely the way to go. Community is the biggest thing that will be your savior. Like, when I moved to Austin, that was the first time I was really ever surrounded by the exact resonance of people that I was looking for. Like, I always had bits of community in Toronto with people who were interested in meditation and women's circles and all the things. But there's something about seeking out intentionally, like, your kind of people. And for me, that's the people who love the balance of, like, modern society and how many opportunities that brings us. And also, like, at the end of a Friday, getting a text message from my friend asking if I want to ground barefoot in the park and, like, eat fruit bowls, you know? So I would say the biggest thing is seeking out your people, and that might look like just honestly saying hi to someone new at your yoga studio. Like, it could be as easy as that. But also it could be Instagram. I've made so many friends through Instagram, just reaching out to people that I resonate with, asking to meet up, go for a walk. One of my very best friends I met at a women's circle. My other best friend I met through Instagram. And, you know, you could go to a retreat. Like, there's so many options, but you have to surround yourself with people who can relate to your experience of finding the balance between those worlds, and actively help you find that balance together. It makes it so much more fun.
Yes. Yeah. And I love how you touch on that. Like, you don't necessarily have to live off grid and have the goats and everything in the farm. Like, if you want that, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, you can, there's always times where I'm like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go live off grid. But it is like being in the matrix, but you understand that you're you understand how it works.
Yes.
So you're not like controlled by it.
Exactly.
And all the practices that we've talked about today, through breathwork, through feeling your emotions, through developing a deeper connection with yourself, that also allows you, when you're resonating higher and at this higher vibration, that everybody that's kind of caught in the right rat race, you're going to start to find your people. You'll meet somebody at a women's circle, you'll find somebody on Instagram, and just kind of randomly these people will start coming your way. It's never random, but they will start coming your way. And yeah, because I know that for myself, like, I'm here in Austin, I see the matrix when I'm driving to Third Eye Meditation Lounge. I see the matrix. I see people honking at me and freaking out and all of that, but like, I'm out of it. and you see it from a different perspective. And I know that's probably similar for you. Like, you see it from a different perspective, so that you do have the friend that on a Friday wants to go ground and grab fruit bowls. Like, that's amazing. And you can have that for yourself too. And I love your perspective on that. That's beautiful. The last thing that I want to touch on is I would love to talk about MDMA and just get to know what brought you to it. So somebody that's like done breath work, they are finding themselves and they have a really good foundation and they want to explore more. Like, what brought you to facilitating it?
Yeah. So much we could dive into there. What I love about that medicine, because to me it really is a medicine, and I know you would agree, is that when used with intention, in the same way that meditation or breath or tapping is a tool that when used with intention can unlock so much transformation and healing, it's incredible. And what I love about that substance as a medicine is the way that it helps you access your heart. And sometimes people have so much armor around their heart because they opened it up and they were really, really hurt. For me, I had a very long-term relationship from 9th grade through the end of college, so like 8 years. And there was a point in that period where I thought I was going to marry this person, and he cheated on me. And it was the most devastating thing in my life. And to this day was one of the top 3 hardest things I've ever been through. One of the most emotionally charged events that I've been through that I did not have the tools to process at that time. And so years and years later, I realized I was still processing it without consciously knowing it. And I have friends who've lost parents, who've lost really close loved ones, and it hurts to open your heart again to life after you go through something like that, like heartbreak or grief or loss. And there's something about as a medicine that reminds you what it's like to just love purely, to be in the energy of love, to feel a connection to something greater. And it's very gentle, it's very safe. I find that there's much less opportunity to kind of get lost in the web of your mind in the way that some of the more classic psychedelic substances can happen, even though challenging experiences are beautiful experiences too. But to feel that sense of just pureness and love and connection and openness, you don't go back from that. It's like if you have practices in place to actually integrate that experience rather than it being maybe like this thing where someone gives you a pill at a club and like there's no realness or intention around that experience or safety, to be honest. But when there's safety, intention, community, and integration, that feeling stays with you. And you can bring that to yourself, you can bring it in your relationships, and people notice a difference, whether or not they know like exactly the experience you had, they feel it.
Yes, it was beautifully said. And I know that for myself, with doing it in a ceremony setting as opposed to a place where the best intentions have not been set, and maybe at, like a concert or something, 2 completely different experiences. Like, it's still amazing, but in the ceremony setting, it truly does feel like your love and your heart just opens. Like, it just bursts open, and you actually feel what it feels like to just have an open heart. You're like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I didn't really understand what a closed heart felt like. Like, now I really understand what it feels like. And it definitely does stick with you afterwards. Like, it's a sense of going about your days with more love and a trust and a knowing and allowing yourself to love yourself more and love other people more. It is like, it is gratitude for your life, and you can live with a more open heart. So I absolutely love how you put that. And I think it's for somebody that maybe wants to experience it, ask us more questions or come to you, ask you questions about it. Because it is a beautiful medicine that we get access to when we use it with intention. So
yeah, and there's beautiful. Also, like, anytime we talk about these substances, I always want to acknowledge all of the people who have put their entire lives into destigmatizing these substances. Maps.org is an amazing place to go for resources and for the research on all of the lives that are being completely transformed. And in case this is a new topic to you, just for reference, with PTSD in particular, the current research is showing that for these study patients, going through these trials, when it's just psychotherapy and maybe SSRIs, kind of like the baseline, it's a 35% improvement rate over the course of the study. An improvement rate, which just means there's a little bit of a decline in the severity of those symptoms. On the flip side, for those who go through the same exact setup of psychotherapy but with MDMA-assisted therapy, not only is it a 70% difference, so that's already double, we're not even talking improvement rate anymore. We're talking cure rate. So that's far more than double, like an effectiveness means, because it means these people can't even be classified as having PTSD anymore because their symptoms have been so reduced. So we're talking a substance that has immense potential for healing humanity, for healing hearts, for healing such immense pain that people are enduring. And I just have so much respect for the people who have been in this work for decades and decades underground, because nobody was listening and nobody was open to seeing all the potential that this stuff has. So want to recognize them too anytime I bring this up, because this is just the beginning.
Yeah, it truly is. We can look at treating depression, anxiety, trauma in a completely different way, and a way that isn't not allowing us to feel what we need to feel and is just putting a Band-Aid on it, and like actually allowing us to feel what we need to and have a beautiful medicine and beautiful facilitation that allows us to access that place and feel safe and seen and heard while we do it. So it is something beautiful that we are getting access to, and more people will get access to as we move forward. So thank you for speaking on that. And is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners or people watching this? Is there anything that you would like to just leave people with that's on your heart?
Yeah, and it's funny you asked that question, because I also want to flip it back to you after I say this, which is that for me, if there was one experience I could wish for everybody, it's to feel safe to be you in the world. And that means safe to feel your most expansive bliss and to express that. And that means feeling safe to say I love you more, and that means feeling safe to trust in a higher power. That means feeling safe to be with the hurt and the grief and the pain, and to know that it's there to hold you too. And so my question for you then is, if there was one thing you could wish for everyone, what would it be?
To feel, it's similar to what you said, but to feel welcome, here, and to know what unconditional love truly is. And I've seen that through group breathwork sessions. I've seen that with plant medicine ceremonies. Like, people are separate. We live in a world where we often feel separated from each other. And when we come together and we allow ourselves to feel, and we feel safe to be who we really are, that's when everybody comes together as one. And I've seen it happen over and over again. We're no longer strangers. We are all just one. And we are one in just love and loving awareness. It allows us to just truly be one together. And that's something that I wish everybody gets to experience. And I'm sure that's why we do the work that we do, is to allow others to know that we are all one and we are all the same.
Ain't that right?
Yeah,
That's
beautiful.
why we're here.
Yes, mic drop to end it. If people want to find more about what you do, where can they do that?
You can find me on Instagram first and foremost. I'm at Claire, CLAIRE .Ollila, OLLILA. And I also have a really beautiful virtual studio if you're not ready, or if you're feeling not ready for a personal one-on-one session with breathwork, but you'd still like to give it a try. I have a really awesome 5-day free trial on claritylabstudio.com. And there's a full 5-day sort of introductory course in there that gives you all the fundamentals of everything I talked about today: breathwork, tapping, toning, and getting started with your own daily practice, as well as a full library of different themes and lengthed practices if you're wanting to explore that deeper after the trial.
Yeah, beautiful. I know that I've seen that. It is an incredible space. So if you're somebody looking to get into this work more and have that guidance, it's a beautiful place to start. And I'll have all those links down in the description for you guys. Claire, thank you so much for being with me today. I am sending you all the love and appreciation. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And if you're listening, leave a 5-star review. I also wanted to let you know I just released a subscription that is Becoming Conscious. You get access to guided breathwork recordings as well as guided meditations from 5 minutes all the way up to 60 so that you can start living a more conscious life. You can click down in the description and you'll get access to it for free for 7 days. I hope that you enjoy. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.